Hello, grade 7, and welcome to today's session. Today is October 11th, and I would like to start by sharing with you guys what we see on SMS. Okay, and I would like to share with you our weekly plan for this week. All right, you guys will find it on SMS posted under weekly plans. For today, we're going to start an introduction to Thank You, Ma'am, which is our new story that we're starting to read. The author is Langston Hughes. We're going to focus on the literary analysis or your reading skill for the story is going to cover conflict. What is conflict and the different types of conflicts that we can face, okay, in a story or we could see in a story. All right. We're not going to read the story today. We're just going to read about the author and learn more about him and his background. Okay. We're going to learn more about what conflict is and the types of conflicts and how to identify them in a story. And then the second session, we're going to cover the types of nouns. As listed here, you guys could tell that we have proper, common, abstract, concrete, and collective. Okay, these types of nouns are going to be divided between 2 days because again, it might not be enough time um, to cover them in class. Okay, just all of them in one session. All right. This is for today. All right. So starting off, your story. Thank you, ma'am. Is going to start on page 62. Okay. And the big question here says, who sees the best in you? Who sees the best in you? All right. And of course, you guys can think about a lot of people that see the best in you. Okay, like your parents. All right, your friends, your family. They always see the best in you, and they always see that you have potential. That means that they, even if you make mistakes, your parents are always willing to forgive you. Okay, because they see the best in you. They know that, that you guys are, kind and smart, and people that love you usually they're able to forgive you for any mistakes that you've done because they see what is best in you. Okay, this is the big question. All right, so who sees the best in me? I want you to think about it and give it some thoughts. All right, if we look together here, I'm gonna share a little bit about the story with you. Okay, so Thank You, Ma'am is a short story. Okay, the genre is a short story, so it is fiction. All right, so it's based on imaginary details. It's not true. All right. Here we're going to learn how to characterize characters. We're going to learn about characterization later on. All right. I want you to look at the author. Okay, this is your author, Langston Hughes. All right. He is an African American author. Okay, and he lived in Harlem, all right, or he was raised in New York. Okay, and he was born on February 1st, 1902, and he died in 1967. All right, he is considered one of the very famous authors during that time because not only was he an author, but he was also into jazz poetry. Okay, and he's a very famous author during the period of time that was called the Harlem Renaissance. And we're going to get into the Harlem Renaissance later. Remember, Harlem is a place in New York City where it was famous for being occupied by a lot of African Americans. If you guys could see, this is Harlem, New York. Okay, all right. If you look at Harlem right now, it looks it's very big, and we see the high buildings and so on. But if we looked at Harlem back in the day, you would see that it was very poor. Okay, people living in Harlem were suffering poor living conditions. A lot of people that lived there were not employed. Okay, they couldn't find jobs. So during the 1920s, Harlem started going through what we call the Harlem Renaissance. All right, and the Harlem Renaissance is a period of time where African Americans started to have their own identity. All right, through having their own music, their own fashion, their own even stories and so on. And if we read about Langston Hughes in the book, we would learn that he wanted to write to show the struggles, all right, of African American people living at that time. All right, he wanted to show understanding of everyday people, people who may not be famous or rich, but whose lives are inspiring and valuable. All right, so he wanted to write stories that inspire and teach young generations a lesson. And this is the story that we're going to read in Thank You, Ma'am. Okay, so again, if we look at the story, we would understand that the setting of the story, where the story takes place, is going to be Harlem, New York. All right, it's during the 1950s, and it's late at night. Okay, so we're gonna get this information when we read together tomorrow. All right, here again we're gonna understand this, the difference between external and internal conflict, and this is the lesson that I want to focus on for today. Okay, so for that we're gonna start with the types of conflicts. All right. First of all, I would like to first start off by explaining what is a conflict. And to understand the conflict, we would understand that the conflict is basically um, the issue, all right, or the problem that your character is facing. Okay, your character could be facing any type of problem, like the ones that we read in seventh grade. The conflict of the boy was that he was interested in Teresa and he wanted to gain her attention. That here is the conflict of the story. All right, so the conflict is basically a problem. All right, so this is what the point that I wanted to emphasize. All right, now when we think about it, we have two types of conflicts. All right, the ones that I wanted to start with is the two that are mentioned in the book, that are internal and external conflict. So if you look at the word external and internal, these are the two types of conflicts that we have. If we look at the word external, okay, we can tell from the word extra that means it's like outside. All right, it's when your character is struggling with an outside force. All right, it's when your character is struggling with an outside force. Now that is your external conflict. On the other hand, your internal conflict is more of, the word in will help you understand that it's internal, it's inside. Okay, and X outside. Okay, this is a very big help or hint. Internal conflict is when the character is struggling between wanting something and knowing that taking it is wrong, or when you're facing basically choice making, or when you are stuck between making two decisions. So basically, it's between you and yourself. Okay, so it's between the character. So an internal conflict is a problem between the character versus himself or herself. Okay, like for example, if I am stuck between making a decision, should I go to the birthday party or should I stay home and study and prepare for a quiz? Now, this is an internal conflict because you're here in a dilemma, all right? You here are stuck between making two choices, or you have to make a choice between two things, okay? Should I go to the party or should I stay home and study? Now, that is internal. You know that if you go to the party, it's wrong because then you're sacrificing your grade. So you're kind of stuck between making two decisions. This is internal conflicts, all right? So external means outside, with outside forces. What are some types of outside forces that you could face? It could be person versus person, okay? So when you're discussing this here, person versus self, this is internal conflict, all right? This is internal. The rest are external, okay? Like person versus person means character versus another character. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means, for example, if I have John and John is being bullied by his classmate Bob, then this is an example of external conflict, that is character versus character or person versus person. Okay? So we can say person versus person, we can say character versus character. They mean the same thing. All right? Another thing that we can have is person versus society. Here we're talking about issues that related to racism and so on, or a group of people. Like when women were not able to get an education. Now, women here were treated unfairly, not only by one person, by a large group of people. Everyone during that time thought that women were not allowed to get an education. All right, everyone thought that women belonged to the house, and that's it. Now, here women faced an external conflict, but not with just one person, but with an entire way of how society thinks, or how the entire world thinks at that time, or a large group of people. Okay? African Americans, when they were not allowed to get an education or they were being discriminated against, they were not allowed to sit in the front of the bus. They had to take the back seats. They weren't allowed to go to certain schools or have certain jobs. Now, this is another example of African Americans versus society, because it was a large group of people that thought about them this way and treated them differently. When we think about person versus nature, this is also another external conflict, and it means you facing uh, uh, things from nature, all right, things that are God sent, things that are not human. Like, for example, if a person is struggling during an earthquake, trying to survive an earthquake, that is person versus nature. A person that is stuck on a ship and he has to struggle with the dangerous, rough sea, okay, this is also person versus nature. Okay, when you're struggling with a snowstorm, this is also versus nature. Also, when you're struggling with an animal, if your story revolves around a person trying to escape a tiger, the tiger is trying to attack the person. Now this is also a conflict that is from nature. So animals or any natural disaster by wind, hurricanes, earthquakes, to tsunamis, any of this such things are considered of nature. The supernatural is also external. Man versus supernatural is more about monsters or ghosts, haunted places, evil spirits. All these things are supernatural. Technology, finally, is about things that are technological. Okay? If a person is struggling with a laptop, they cannot understand the technology behind the laptop. They're struggling with the internet connection. They're struggling with a mobile. They're struggling with a spaceship. They're struggling with a time machine. Anything that is technological, robots or so on, this is all related to technology. This is an example of person versus technology. All right, the PowerPoint here is going to be posted for you guys to go over them again and again. When two girls, the example here for person versus person or character versus character, two girls competing. All right, in a competition when you're competing with a classmate, this is person versus person. Okay, now person versus self is internal. Remember, we said that this is internal. All right, a young man goes through hard times after losing his father in a car accident. Now you're struggling with your own self. You're struggling with your sadness, with your trauma. All right, a person that has a physical disability and has to push himself to the limit. Now again, you're struggling with your with the disability that you have. A person who's unable to walk, let's say, example, that's paralyzed, that has to do his best to do better and walk and learn. This is also person versus self, because you're struggling with your own society, like I said, with a group of people. All right, all right, like examples of lawsuits or racism or stuff like that. Things from nature, again, a ship, okay, a captain pursues a great white whale through stormy seas. This is again a part of nature. Okay, the supernatural, monsters, haunted houses, and so on. Technology, elevators, or robots from space. Again, these are technology. All right. Now, here are some practice questions that I want you to go over on your own, and the answers are written for you. So test yourselves and see if you could get them correct or not. Okay. The homework for today will be to study your types of conflicts and then answer the types of conflicts worksheet. Okay. So this is our session for today, covering types of conflicts and a little bit of history behind our author, Langston Hughes, and the Harlem Renaissance. Thank you, and anticipate my next video covering the types of nouns. Thank you.